Hey guys, Coach Chris here, back with another video. So in our last video we talked about where do we start if we know nothing about chess. In this video we'll talk about next steps. So when you first learn the moves of chess, that's great, but do you really know how to put together a chess game? The answer is probably not. You just started. That makes sense, right? So what do we do? How do we actually play a chess game? The answer, whether you're rated 400 or 1400 or 2400, is you play in accordance with the chess principles. Now, we're going to be hitting on three major chess principles. If you want to know more about these, I highly recommend International Master Andras Toth's Chess Principles Reloaded series on Chessable. He does one on center, development, and king safety. Highly recommend them. If you can find them on sale, I would scoop them up. They're really outstanding. In addition, he has a phenomenal YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about aggressive principled chess, this is your guy. If you're going to settle for me, keep watching. In this first video, we are going to be talking about development, the chess principle of development. And the classic game to illustrate this concept is the Opera House game. Played by American Paul Morphy, the pride and sorrow of chess. Very interesting guy. You can look him up at any point. Really interesting game and interesting guy. And so basically Morphy finishes up law studies but has time to kill because he's too young to practice law in the United States. And so he decides to get into chess for a little while, immediately crushes everybody in America, and the only challenge left for him is in Europe. Goes to Europe, tries to challenge the world champion at the time, Howard Staunton. Morphy follows him around Europe. Staunton runs away. Morphy never gets his title shot. But he does play some beautiful games while he's over there, and this is one of them. This is the Opera House game, played, as you might imagine, during an opera. He's playing against a duke and a count. One's German, one's French, and they are consulting with each other while they're playing Morphy. And so Morphy's has the white pieces, and this is how the game goes. He starts with e4, makes a lot of sense, controlling the center, opening up the diagonals for his bishop and queen. Perfect first move. Black responds the same way. Knight f3, developing a piece, getting closer to castling and attacking the center. When you can develop with a threat, that is always a good thing. d6, a bit passive from black. It blocks in his dark squared bishop, and as we'll see, that is a huge problem throughout the game. More common is knight c6 here, which develops a piece and protects the pawn. So after d6, Morphy immediately strikes in the center with d4. This opens up his dark squared bishop, and now we have two attackers on the e5 point. Black responds with a pin of the knight. Now the knight can't immediately capture because that would lose the queen. However, that's really a superficial look at the position. Morphy, one of the greatest of all time, sees through it and captures on e5. Now, black can't just recapture there, because after queen takes queen, king takes queen, knight takes e5, well, now there's no pin on the queen because they're off the board. The knight is threatening a fork on f7, hitting the bishop, and white is up a pawn. Black just can't play this way. So black first captures the knight on f3. Morphy recaptures with the queen, of course. Black captures on e5, and now bishop c4. And we can already see that white's lead in development is starting to get alarming. Black tries to catch up with knight f6, but Morphy plays the brilliant move, queen to b3. Now typically, if you're trying to get a lead in development, you don't want to move the same piece twice. But development is a two-way street. If you can hinder your opponent's development while getting your own pieces out and hamstring your opponent, then obviously that's a great way to play. And here, black plays queen e7 to guard the threat towards the f7 pawn. Morphy continues to develop knight c3, threatening knight d5. Black tries to stop it with c6. Morphy continues to develop bishop g5. Now that knight on f6 is pinned, if that knight ever moved, Morphy would be able to take the queen. And here, Black plays a fatal mistake, a very common mistake when people are under pressure. They lash out b5. And here we need to stop. White has played perfect chess, has the queen, bishop, knight all developed. Black has one knight that can't move out and a queen on e7 that blocks in the bishop and the rook. White is, for all practical purposes, a bishop and rook up because these pieces can't move. When your opponent lashes out and it's against the spirit of the position, they have no business launching an attack. That must be punished, and the punishment here is knight takes b5. Brilliant move from Morphy, but also extremely logical. Again, White is actually up material, so sacrificing a knight for 2 pawns and an attack is actually a great investment. Black covers the check, knight bd7. Again, the other knight would drop the queen, and Morphy castles queenside. Whenever it's practical to castle queenside, it's usually a great decision, because not only does it get the king safe, it immediately puts the queenside rook on what is usually its best possible square, which is d1. And here we can see that Morphy already has a lot of pressure on d7, because again, that f6 knight can't move, the bishop can't move, and the kingside rook can't move. Morphy has a lot of pressure. Black tries to cover it with rook d8, and then Morphy really highlights his deep understanding of the concept of development. Morphy was way ahead of his time. A beautiful sacrifice of the rook for the knight on d7. So if the queen recaptures, we just take the queen with the bishop. If the knight recaptures, that drops the queen. And so Black is kind of forced to take with the rook. Morphy brings all of his pieces. He gets all of his pieces working, again, in stark contrast to Black, who has the entombed bishop, which also entombs the rook. Morphy develops all of his pieces, rook d1. So again, lots of pressure on the d7 point because that knight can't move. Black tries to rectify the situation with queen e6, opening up the bishop, but Morphy will not allow his opponent to untangle. And here's a key point. If you are up in development, you have to strike quickly, because if you allow your opponent time to untangle, eventually they catch up, and that advantage that you had will be gone. So Morphy has to strike fast. Obviously, he's up to the task. Bishop takes d7 check. If the queen takes, then rook takes the queen, and White's way up in material, so that's not palatable to Black. And so that knight is finally unpinned. It can finally move. Knight takes d7. And here, Morphy again showing his brilliance. If Black is allowed time to play bishop e7 and castles, then maybe Black will be fine, and then maybe Black's extra material would start to tell. Morphy's not having it. He uncorks the absolutely brilliant queen to b8 check. This bishop slices across the king's path, so the king can't move. Black's only available move, his only legal move, is to take the queen on b8, and then Morphy plays the absolutely beautiful rook to d8 checkmate. Checkmating with the only 2 pieces he had left on the board, and all of Black's army is helpless. So, beautiful game from Morphy that really highlights the power of development. Let's run it back one more time. Morphy develops, attacks the center. Black has to give up the bishop pair, and then Morphy is just relentless in pursuing his own development and frustrating his opponent's development. Queen e7, blocking in the bishop and the rook is just disastrous. Knight c3, perfect development, and black lashes out. It had to be a bad move, it had to be punished. White is so far ahead in development that there just must be a refutation. Obviously, Morphy finds it, and then the rest is piling up pressure on d7, using all the pieces, and then finding this absolutely beautiful tactic. There had to be a tactic in the position. Black's king had no squares, and White's pieces were far more active. There had to be a tactic. Morphy found it, and created one of the most beautiful games of chess ever played. We're still talking about it today, and this was played in the year of our Lord 1858. So, beautiful game from Morphy, a beautiful example of the power of development. Again, if you want to learn more about these principles, stay tuned. We'll be talking about them all the time. And Andras Toth is a phenomenal resource to learn more about chess principles. So you can check that out as well. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of it, and keep grinding those tactics.